Behind Hansen Dam, a small artificial lake crowns a plateau with a long blue corkscrew-shaped water slide, touching its surface, touching a public swimming area. Richard Matzen, and I'm a professor in rhetoric and composition right now, full professor at Woodbury University. So I did my undergraduate degree at Northern Arizona University, and then I took 12 years off from higher education, and during that time I did a lot of poetry writing and experiments with dance and music. And then I went back in my early 30s for a master's program and began with creative writing as an interest again. But I was really worried about paying the bills, and creative writers don't make that much money. And so I moved over to teaching rhetoric and composition, good employment in that area, and I've done that since the early 1990s. I had about 25, 30 years off without any creative work. And then I went back to poetry in about 2009. So I have two things going on at once now, which is more of a professional, teaching students how to write, teaching professional writers, because there's a major in professional writing I teach in. The other thing I do is creative writing, so I have poetry I've done and I'm moving into a novel. Early teen years, I started reading history because I thought that would be like the truth. You don't want to read, fake stuff like fiction or poetry. So I started reading history, and then after reading history in my early teens, I began to do writing. What pushed me towards poetry was, most recently, kind of needing the outlet, the creative outlet, as a contrast to my more academic teaching work. And I had actually did it kind of as a hobby for like 2 years, just wrote a lot of manuscript without trying to finish it off to a poem or to a poetry book. But towards the end, it became much more of a professional pursuit. And that would be more indicative of where I am now in life, being an older person. But when I was younger, poetry was just more about like sharing life experiences and getting to know other poets. Poem started in 2009. And it started partly because of my commuting. So at that point in 2009, I'd already been on the road since 2005, commuting to Woodbury University where I teach. So what do you do on a commute? Well, a lot of times you listen to music, you kind of pick up stray thoughts. So what does going mean to me? I guess at first it began as having a meaning of just free expression, unbridled, because so much of the work that I do otherwise, as a professional writer, as a teacher, there's always this critical, what's wrong with this, what's wrong with this, what's wrong with this, everything's got something wrong with it. So it's kind of fun to write poetry and just say, whatever I write's fine, and I don't care if it's good or bad or whatever. So most recently, there have been some people like in their early 20s who have read the book, and poetry can be a hard read. I mean, not everyone can sit down and read a whole book of poems. Some readers recently in the early 20s have read the entire book and have found it to be of appeal to them. And so I think that partly means I'm writing for a younger audience. And to me that kind of makes sense, because going is a lot about not being sure where you're going. But on another level, I'm writing for people who are more of my age, because you get good at working and maybe not as good as enjoying life, and you kind of want to go back to that. And then there's this theme of jazz through some of the poems, and on that I'd say in some ways I'm writing for jazz musicians or fans of Jack Kerouac or Allen Ginsberg or the Beat Poets. So I think I have various audiences, but that's one of the fun things about doing a poetry book is you think you know who you're writing for, but then you hear what people think about the poems, and it kind of clarifies for you who your audience is in some ways. Passing, old school, driving with a stick shift car, racing in the commute, driving by Lakeview Terrace exit with eyes on the road, along with all those other sunglass tinted eyes facing west, facing the sunset on I-210 coming, going under the I-18, going by McKay exit as the old car's throttle zips up the upgrade, listening to Billie Holiday, a sorrowful lilt with my head in the sun visor's shade.